For those that do not know, Coach Torresani was my boss for 1 year at Arcadia before he fired me and sent me to North Carolina and said, "You're better off as a podcaster than a baseball coach." And he has had quite the journey since that day. And I think he's has a ton of lessons learned since that day. So why don't you update our listeners on where you've been, what you've been up to, and where you've gotten to at this point?
Yeah, you have to follow the bouncing ball here a little bit, but um, yeah, after Arcadia, after the 2023 season, I took a job as the recruiting coordinator at the University of Delaware. Um, got a chance to work for Greg Mamula, who's just a tremendous mentor, baseball coach, friend, the whole nine yards. Was there for 1 year, and honestly, I guess that's where my story kind of starts. Like, really wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go with my career and my life in general, and thought I was going to get out of baseball completely. And I actually left the University of Delaware without a job. I'm married to a saint, I guess, so that helps. But um, left the University of Delaware and kind of did some soul searching and realized that I really did want to keep coaching, and so I had to kind of grind it out for a year as a volunteer assistant at the Sales University, and thankful to Coach Nyman, who was the longtime head coach there, was there for 36 seasons, and was worked with him last year in his last year as the head coach at the Sales, and was lucky enough to get hired as the head coach there. This past summer, and we're 11 games into our first season, so certainly get more into some of the whys and behind all that, but that's kind of the quick outline of the last few years for me.
And I think the thing that you, being the humble person that you are, don't add in is highly successful coach with a great trajectory in your career. Not only did you leave an Arcadia program that was at its peak and what you had built over the time you were there, but then being able to be a Division I assistant. And so many people think of the journey of being a baseball coach as like, that's exactly where you want to be, right? When I was 22 years old, wrapping up my college education, if you told me I was in that position where I was taking a recruiting coordinator job at a great Division I baseball program, it's like that's the next step of the journey to be where we all want to be. So why don't you talk us a little bit about just like that soul searching that came from that, and maybe the why behind the confusion almost.
Yeah, I think it actually starts at Arcadia. Um, and yes, we were successful there, and we won, four championships in 7 years, and had a bunch of players go to Division I programs with COVID years and as grad transfers and things like that, and it certainly was a rewarding experience. However, I was just burning the candle at both ends, and not even really realizing it, and I just wasn't healthy. Like, I wasn't healthy mentally. I wasn't healthy physically at times during that tenure, and really, once I left and went to Delaware, like, something in my head just kind of changed. Like, I just felt like, um, and nothing personal, I just felt like I wasn't at the right place for some reason at that time. And I'll say that, and also say at the same time, I think I was exactly at the right place, and I'll get into some of that too. But and so I think the burnout was like kind of real for me, and at times was creating like this toxic environment at Arcadia, and even spilling into my own home, and that is where I really had to decide to make some changes, and life happens in funny ways, I guess, and it's worked out, it seems like, right now, and but it was a trying time, and I think part of the reason why I'm willing to come on and and share like this journey is because I don't think my story is unique. I think there are a lot of people, and especially coaches, that go through what I went through. Family stress, coaching stress. And it can take a toll on people, and so I think getting it out there, if it helps one person, is kind of like my goal here with some of the things I'm doing.
And we'll discuss some of the things that you're doing up to this day in terms of the content creation and becoming a competitor of backside ground balls media. But we'll discuss those terms off air and off record. But one of the things that I find fascinating is in the time that I was lucky enough to work for you, it was like there were times where I slept in your basement. I got to spend time with your family. I felt like there were several opportunities to get to know you in that realm, and really admired the family person you were, and the time that you were able to commit to them and what you brought in terms of your relationships with both your kids and your wife as well. And then I would see the stress of the baseball side of it once springtime came around. And again, I tell everybody we had a very successful spring, and there was a lot more highs than lows, but I could tell that it wore on you to a certain extent. Talk about that dichotomy, because I've always found that, admirable of you is like, when I look at the person you were and the friend that you were and the father and all of those things that come into play, it was, man, it's unbelievable. And then I'd see how stressed out you get during a baseball game. I'm like, dude, like, you have a great life. Like, just sometimes just acknowledge that when we're down maybe in the seventh inning.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I appreciate you painting that picture, because I think that's what anxiety does to people, right? Like when you struggle with anxiety, it can really blind you to the positive things that are occurring in your life, because you're, at least for me, like, just so worried about the future and the things I couldn't control. Um, that it would get in the way of me seeing the positive things that were happening, in my life. Do I think was a bad father or bad husband? No. Were there moments I was a bad father and bad husband? Yes, like that. And I think that still happens, but it happens much less now, than it did back then. Did I think I was a bad coach? No. I think there are a lot of things I wish I could go back and change, but I also know, that I have a lot of guys that are appreciative, that they got a chance to play for me. And I do think learned a lot of valuable lessons. But I'll be honest, like, at the time, like, it was hard for me to see that, just because I was struggling so much with, um, just like I said, just the anxiety of, and the pressure I felt to win and perform. And really, I guess, just a lot of times just tying my identity, like, completely to baseball. Right. And, when you do that, it can take its toll. And that's what sort of happened, I think, at that time frame for me. And I guess I'll finish it this way. Like, when you let it control you and it spills over, like, that's when it comes out in the wrong way. That's when those stressful moments in the dugout happen, and you create environments where guys walking on eggshells and maybe aren't excited to come to the field for practice because they're worried about getting yelled at or things like that. And just that was me. And I'm glad that some of these things have happened in my life that have shown me a different way.
So many coaches, they think, because I think that's a great lesson for coaches to kind of dive into this. So many coaches not excuse that, but they say, well, I'm a competitive person. And we want our players to be competitive. We want to be competitive. If me and you were playing ping pong in the office, it would probably get competitive. But sometimes competition comes out and almost brings out the worst in us. What's kind of your opinion on kind of the journey you've taken and that identity of, well, I'm just a competitive person, and when the lights turn on and that scoreboard is on and there's a score and there's a record attached to my name as the head coach, versus being able to understand what true competition is to bring out the best in maybe your players and people who work with you.
Yeah, no, I mentioned this a few minutes ago. Like, as much as I felt like Delaware might not have been, like, for me at that time, like, completely, it was also, like, exactly what I needed, because I got to watch Mams, coach for an entire season. And I've mentioned this before on my own podcast and just in conversations with people. He is a very competitive person. Like, he obviously, like, he spent his whole life in baseball and wants to win and is a winner and has won pretty much everywhere he's been. And at that level, like, those guys they're paid to win, right? And they can be fired if they don't win. That doesn't often happen at Division 3, but at Division 1, like, that's kind of the job. And a lot of people, a lot of guys in those shoes, I think, project that onto the players. And we even had conversations in the office about this, where, like, Mams would intentionally control himself so that he wasn't projecting that stress onto the players. I can't say he wasn't feeling any stress about that. I'm sure he was, but he just did such a good job of creating an environment where, like, the players didn't feel stressed about winning and losing, and yes, I know that sounds like, well, it's the whole point. And yeah, of course, like, we worked hard at it. We wanted to win, but it was just eye-opening for me to see a different way, how calm he was in the dugout when something wouldn't go our way, the way he handled umpires when he thought they made a mistake. Like, the way he handled players that might not be living up to our standards. Like there was just a lot of things that I saw from him that was like the light bulb went off for me where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been doing this kind of wrong for the last 15, 16 years. So, I think that's important. And obviously being a competitor, like, yeah, like there were moments where, I can remember one in particular where like I did see him get a little bit emotional and I was like, all right, like at least I know he's got it in him, which I liked to see, but like it's still just eye opening to see him. And it was been a really, that year it was been so impactful on my life, which uh, even going back, like I didn't see that at first either. For me, it was just like, oh, I have this long commute and it's too much travel and I'm away from my family too much. Like again, the anxiety forces you to look at a lot of the negatives. And now that I've taken a step back from all that and I have a much clearer head, I actually can see all the positives that happened to me from that experience. So it's been cool. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it even happened yesterday for me. Like we lost a game we shouldn't have lost, quite frankly, and my post game speech wasn't great. Like I was emotional, and we, and it wasn't too bad, but at the same time, like like that's the old me coming out a little bit. So like I the lesson I guess is this: like I can learn from it now. I can recognize it much faster, right, and be able to kind of make an adjustment. Where in the past I would just let it spill over and it could get ugly. So